Hi, I'm MrByZ, and today we're going to be taking a look at just different things that Hasbro and Kenner made for the different Star Wars lines that were based on maybe early concepts or ideas that were supposed to be used in the film, but they got deleted before the film got made and still the toy came out. So I'm not talking about, say, things like Colonel Kraken here, where they actually went back and made figures based on deleted scenes, but this is more in initial release where you have stuff that came out that was based off of an early idea, but then was abandoned by Lucasfilm before the film came out. But Hasbro or Kenner was so far along in the process, they just didn't change it and still put it out as is. So let's go ahead. We're going to take a look at these in film order, meaning we're going to start with episode 1 and go all the way through actually solo here, because nothing I could really find in episode 9, but not a lot from our episode 9 anyway, right?
So we have R2-D2 from the Phantom Menace, and he's got this feature where we have these rockets that are hidden and can pop out. And they're rockets in different places from what we saw in later movies, but they pop out of the barrel of his body. It's for a deleted scene where he's supposed to fall off a platform on Coruscant and then rise back up. Obviously in a different place here, though. So here is the two-headed announcer from the Bunta Pod Race. The initial design for the character was used for the figure that we see here that came with the Jabba the Hutt figure that spits out the fish that goes in the gong. And then we have the actual looking figure here, what it looked like in the movie, came out later as a single pack. So we actually got both designs here. With this Mace Windu figure that was a mail-in with the Phantom Menace, he had a blue lightsaber instead of the purple lightsaber you would have in later movies. It's just because they hadn't had the purple lightsaber yet. And yet we have Ki-Adi-Mundi coming with a purple lightsaber just because he hadn't shown his saber blade at all in the movies either, and Hasbro just made it up. There's a couple like that, actually, in these different movies. Here is Sebulbas Pod Racer, which had a unique feature to it that was supposed to be in the movie and wasn't. And that was this blade that was supposed to come spinning out of the side of the engine. As I'll demonstrate here, you had to press the button, it would pop out. Put it back in here for a second so we can see that. But it pops out, and then it will spin if you press the button more. And instead, we got the flash jets on it. Here we have C-3PO from Attack of the Clones, and the idea was there was supposed to be some scene where he gets the plating put on him. So originally we have the 3PO we saw in Phantom Menace, and then the pieces get put on him as we see it. And so the figure came out with the platings that came off like that. And with Slave 1, now this is a really interesting one because they, of course, did an entirely new Slave 1 mold for this. And, Obi-Wan throws a little tracker on Slave 1. And so we have a little decal to show that tracker. But you can flip this little thing one more time, and it shows, and this was described in the instructions too, that they destroyed the tracker, which didn't happen in the movie. The tracker was never destroyed. Obviously, this is some sort of leftover idea from something that was supposed to happen in the movie. We also have guns coming from the middle, whereas the guns were more on the side of the movie when he was firing at Obi-Wan. This is the clone trooper with speeder bike. Clones were never on a speeder bike, so whether this was a Hasbro idea or something that was originally supposed to be in there. But, they made it so that you could take these speeder bikes apart and store them in your gunships as well. There was a nice little spot to store them in there. It was a great clone that came with it, and it's a completely new speeder bike tooling for the most part. And then we have the Geonosian, and the first Geonosian came out was totally fine. It was the second one, which actually wasn't labeled as a Geonosian. It was labeled as the Massif with Geonosian. Somewhere along the lines, early on, the Massif was supposed to be the pets of the Geonosians, and they changed them over to be the pets of the Tusken Raiders instead. So as you can see here in the original card, we see that it's labeled as Massif, and it comes with the Geonosian. Later on, they would actually pack the Massif with the Tusken Raider corrected, much like it was in the actual movie. So here's Mon Mothma from Episode 3, who didn't actually appear in Episode 3. She's in a deleted scene, but in the actual movie that's been on Blu-ray, DVD, and was in theaters, she did not actually appear for the most part. And for Palpatine, we have an interesting thing here. If we look at his lightsaber that is attached to his hand, it's not removable, it looks to be the hilt of Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. Here it is lit up as red, but originally there was one put out with a blue blade as well, as kind of a variant, and was changed to red later on. We're not sure why this actually happened, though. And then there's Yoda on the cancel. Now, the interesting thing here is this got recycled later on. We have the Yoda on cancel. Somehow he was supposed to be writing these things on Kashyyyk. Later on, these cancels were then used in Clone Wars. So they actually did get used later on in Star Wars. And this one, I'm not totally sure if this was some sort of canceled thing, but we do have the clones with the jetpacks. I include it here because there's been some stuff that shows that there were clones with jetpacks somewhere planned for the movie. It never actually happened. But we did get a 2-pack from Hasbro with clones with jetpacks, with wings on them even. And for Mustafar, this may just be more of a Hasbro decision, but in the Mustafar playset, we have this little pool of lava that you can actually flip over, and there's a hand coming out of it. And as we all know, Anakin didn't actually go into lava, he was more next to it, so there wouldn't be reaching out of it. This one may be a reach as well here, but the Grievous wheel bike actually has Grievous and his little chair and everything, and the gun, really, on the wrong side of the wheel bike. For most collectors, this shouldn't be a big surprise, but there were some issues with the Cantina Aliens in that Kenner just didn't get good shots of these aliens, so it was hard for them to design their outfits. And so we got things like Blue Snaggletooth, who is too tall, and Greedo in some strange outfit, not to mention Hammerhead in a onesie. This was more of an artistic choice, I believe, rather than a deleted idea. They just didn't have all the information to make everything, so they just created it themselves. Something that may have been changed, though, at some point is in the Star Destroyer playset seen here, in that there's a piece that I don't actually have on mine, but there's a little red piece that comes down, and it's supposed to be Darth Vader can speak to the Grand Vizier, as it says here on the side of the box. Ultimately, he talked to the Emperor, but was he supposed to have talked to somebody else or something? But it's just like a kind of clear red piece of plastic. It doesn't look like a hologram or any sort of character. So we're not totally sure what that was or some early idea of what the Emperor would be. When we go to the sequel movies, nothing can be thought of more as a deleted idea that Hasbro produced than a Zuvio here. Constable Zuvio was put out early on in both 6-inch and 3 3/4-inch form, and was barely in the movie. And we all wondered who he was going to be, what was going on with this character. And he's a very flash, quick and missed it, much more than any Cantina alien, really. Other figures that got made but were barely in the movie are like Sarko Plank here, or Goss Tours. And something else that didn't make it to the movie at all was this Desert Land Speeder. We got a nice vehicle of it, and it showed up in video games. It showed up even in the visual dictionary. It did not show up in the movie. It is referenced in the novel, though, so showing it was probably supposed to have happened and gotten cut somewhere along the way before the movie came out. Did you know there was a scene where Unkar Plutt was supposed to follow everybody to Maz Kanata's castle, and Chewbacca was going to rip off his arm? Hasbro knew all about it. Next is the much maligned Millennium Falcon put out for The Force Awakens. So this Millennium Falcon for Force Awakens, a lot of people, of course, had problems with the giant red Nerf dart that gets launched out of the front here. But that's not what I'm talking about here. When we get into this vehicle, there's all sorts of kind of cool, fun play features. Stuff that actually makes sense. If I can get them to work right here. There we go. Like you can actually turn off the hyperdrive and things like that. And the interior isn't really all that bad. And they made, things like that this will pop up. You can put a figure in here and all sorts of stuff like that. But it's got this whole play feature area, which, not much happened per se with any of this in the Falcon. We even have a gun we can set up here. And the makers of this ship actually have said that when they were tasked with making it, they didn't even know what the Falcon was going to do in the movie. And so they did things like the hyperdrive, and obviously gave us an interior that shows us what we have. Plus having our gunner's area in that, which, yes, it has a tiny little gun right here, and then extra guns that don't exist and that sort of thing. They just kind of added some of these features because they just didn't know what the Falcon was going to do in the movie. And so you can take like this gun, and you see these little holes here all over the place. You can put it wherever you would like in there to use. So it becomes a little like play set. You've got stairs and stuff that go in here to open up to a little bit more. And so while a lot of stuff didn't happen necessarily. They just didn't know what was going to happen with this. No, nobody thought that there was going to be a giant missile that fired out of the middle of this in the movie. That was never created for this. It was supposed to be a fun play feature. Just one of those things where they didn't know what it was going to do, so they just kind of made up some play features for it. I've included this because I think it must have been meant to have been in the movie, but the Assault Walker, we got two different versions of this in 3 3/4. There was even a 12-inch version. Seems like somewhere along the line this was actually supposed to happen in the movie, but got cut. Probably early on, but they still went ahead with the toy. Then, of course, there's this stealth First Order speeder bike that never happened in the movie either. This seems to be more of a Hasbro creation, as it's using parts from previous speeder bikes, but who knows. Rogue One had a lot of filming issues, obviously, as a lot of it had to be re-shot and recut. And one of the things that seems to have gotten missed and changed somewhere in there is the rankings of our two main characters with Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor, where Cassian was a captain, and that's more said in the movie, but we see Jyn Erso as a Sergeant Jyn Erso. And this is something to where there was supposed to be something more with a ranking with her, and there was all sorts of different storylines going on that eventually got cut down to what we actually saw. Next, there is C2B5, which is an Imperial astromech droid. He came with the AT-ACT, and I honestly thought this droid was going to play some part of the role in this movie. We even got a Disney Elite figure for him. Seemed like somewhere this droid was going to do something, like it was the Imperial version of R2-D2 and going to save the day for the Imperials or something. And I'm not even sure if you really see this droid in the movie at all. It's just so odd that we had different versions of it and included. Granted, it's a pretty easy one for Hasbro to make, but I'm very surprised at how much this had happened. And maybe there's some version of Rogue One out there where this droid was supposed to play a bigger role. To finish up, there's the Solo Land Speeder, which, when you initially look at it, it seems like what's wrong with that, but it's actually based off some early concept art for the Solo Land Speeder, and the Land Speeder in the movie is actually a little different. There's a couple different changes on it that just make it look just a little more different. I will admit I'm not the expert on this. I just know that it is definitely different from the one that came in the movie. So I hope you enjoyed this look at different features and figures and things like that were deleted before the films came out. Was there anything I missed? I'm sure there's got to be some things I missed. Please, if you found something I missed, post it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. I tried to really rack my brain about all sorts of different things, go through the collection and try and find different figures, different features, stuff. I was like, this all started with that germ of an idea, basically from the Slave One from Attack of the Clones, where I remembered that little tracking device thing. But, really started searching through all the different things that were made. But if I missed something, I'd love to hear about it because I'm sure there's a few I missed. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to you joining me for some more look backs at different stuff, as well as reviews of brand new things as they come out. Thank you so much for watching.